Good morning, my colleague Bharat Gupta, Dr. Abhi Madila, and all the participants. We thank Professor Mishra for giving us an excellent prescription for how to write a report and the nuances to avoid that way. I think today he will be apprising us and educating us on how to speak effectively. Good morning, sir, and welcome. Please.
Good morning, sir, and welcome. Please.
So you have to make me the presenter. Yes.
Yes,
Ravi, sir.
Please.
Okay. I think I'm audible, visible, both.
Yes, sir.
Definitely.
Okay. Slides visible?
Yes, sir. It is visible, sir.
Okay. So
You can bring it to presentation mode if like.
it's fine?
Yes,
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Sahula, Professor Bharat, and other colleagues of theirs. Good morning, participants as well. I do remember that in yesterday's talk, we talked about the various strategies of writing reports. But then once we are in organization, our jobs are not confined only to writing reports. There are occasions when we need to present those reports. And in order to present those reports, we need to have the skills of effective speaking. So in today's lecture, we shall be discussing how to speak effectively on different occasions, and will try my level best from the core of my heart that I become successful in reaching you, realizing your needs, and telling you how to go further. Now, the moment we say effective speaking, one question that might rise in our minds is that whatever we speak, does it or are they not effective? For our talk to be effective, for our speech, or for other forms of effective, where are the hindrances? Because most of us, we believe that we all have the inherent quality of speaking, right from a child. When we come to this earth, we try to speak, imitating just in the beginning with the lullabies and all. And then as we progress, we actually try to speak, frame sentences, speak. But then on majority of occasions, we think, most of us, as human beings, we often think that whatever we have spoken has become very effective. But my dear friends, it would be quite pertinent here to make a mention of the quote that Bernard Shaw says, the greatest problem in communication is the illusion that it has been accomplished. When you speak, or when I speak, we actually are under the impression that all our thoughts have reached, all our thoughts have been accessed by the people around us. But then that may become a problem at times. That is just a sort of illusion, my dear friends. But on several occasions, when you go to listen to several lectures, several talks, several addresses, you will find that quite a good number of people keep on speaking. And speaking nowadays has become a very important skill. There are many people whose vocation is speaking. Say, for example, the sort of interaction that is between a patient and a doctor. There are many people who have made speaking their profession. For example, the advocates. For example, the coaches. For example, the trainers. I mean, there are n number of people. For example, the counselors. N number of people who keep on speaking, and they have made speaking their profession. So why have they become successful? You at times around yourself find people who are very successful when it comes to speaking. Most of us have been listening to several conferences, several talks, several lectures, several symposiums, and then we find the way the speakers speak We at times feel very jealous of them. We actually try to imitate them, but then we also fail at times. So here is a beautiful quote by Robert Frost, who says, half the world is composed of people who have something to say and cannot. Now here comes the category of people. Among you also, there might be many people who might simply be speaking. No, they have actually got something to say, but then there are also people who are not able to see. But then on the other hand, there are many people who actually have nothing to say, yet they keep on saying. Now, one thing that comes out of this premise is that speaking is an art, isn't it? Because had it not been art, all of us could have been speaking. Why do we feel the goosebumps when we are asked to speak all of a sudden, when we're asked to present something, when you're asked to speak impromptu? Find why? Because you are lacking in certain skills. Even many people who actually work hard, try hard, to make their talks very important, they fail to do so. So in this talk of today, we shall be discussing those regions and as to how we can measure so that when we go for the next time to speak, we become a successful speaker and people actually feel like having achieved something when they go back to their homes. Actually, there's certain facts that most of us should agree. Now, as human beings, all of us have a natural ability of speaking, right? Unless and until we are dumb or whatsoever, we actually have not only an ability of speaking, we actually also have the urge of speaking. No. Why? Because when you speak, you are actually relieving yourself of certain things. Think of these troubled times when you are confined in a room and when you are not going to the workplaces, what a sort of crisis you are facing. At times you feel that you need to talk to people even though you have the facility of speaking over telephones, but then the face-to-face communication that you can have, that has got more effect, that is actually more attractive. Do you really realize that if others can speak, why can't we speak? But then does that also mean that if speaking is an art, so that art can be learned? Not everyone can be a good speaker just in a day. It requires years and years of training, fine? And it requires years and years of practice. Look at those people, successful people who have made speaking their vocation. It is not a one-day job. It is actually the years and years of their struggle and years of their reading or inculcating ideas, which they finally compress into and then they speak. I think if we simply confine ourselves to writing, because as if you refer to yesterday's talk, you'll find that writing has got a very complex process. You can write long sentences, you can write short sentences, you can write complicated paragraphs. And as I told you the other day, on several occasions, for several purposes, your language actually has to change. That actually means that speaking requires use of language. And when you write, you are actually writing in absence. If somebody else reads my book in absence, they may actually, if they come across some problem, they may not ask me. But when it is in the speaking mode, when I'm speaking here, and at the end of the talk also I say, I invite questions, because there is actually a flexibility. What sort of flexibility? Not only the speaker can explain, but actually the listener can ask questions, the listeners can inquire, my dear friend. So a face-to-face communication often becomes more effective. It becomes effective not only because of the way you use words, it also becomes effective because the way you have a control over the non-verbals. I mean, your presence itself matters because you are there. And when you are there, my dear friend, your personality, I mean, there are certain things that comes out of your physical features, your behaviors and whatnot. But then when you use language, you have to be very dexterous as a user, very clever, very subtle, because and this is why we say that when you speak, you first have to ask yourself why you are speaking, for whom you are speaking, my dear friends. Because every person's level may not be the same. And that is why we say speaking skills require consciousness skills. What do I mean by consciousness skills? The way you are conscious of the audience. And these consciousness skills may take so many things in its ambit. How you are conscious or aware of your audience members. Who are the people to whom I am delivering? The people who are listening to me in one corner of the world or the other. Sometimes it may be physical, sometimes it may be offline, sometimes it may be online. But then we have to realize, fine, who are the people on the other side, my dear friend? Fine. So speaking skills require consciousness skills. And another consciousness is how aware you are of time management. How much time I have to speak. No, that is why people actually give you a slot. And when they give you the slot, you are also aware of 1 hour or 2 hour or whatsoever. And in that limited hour, in that limited time, you have actually to say all that you really want to say, because you also might be feeling that you do not want to be spoken over for a long time as a listener. And so do others also have the same sort of experience or same sort of expectations. Most of the time you will find that a speaker who maintains time in terms of speaking is received well. A person who starts his talk in time and ends his talk well in time is actually welcome, more than welcome. That is, that all that means is that we are consciousness of time. And these consciousnesses also take other things into question. For example, how much are you prepared for the show, for the talk, for the gathering? What sort of dress you are wearing, whether you are having a glum face or a radiant one, whether you see when you have a look at the crowd, do you really feel that you have been able to create a sort of rapport with the audience members? So all these are very important, my dear friend. And then, is the speaking advantageous? Because we have been saying that speaking has got more advantage. It actually gives you the time to relieve yourself and to relieve yourself of the trauma, of the tension, of the boredom, of the ennui, my dear. And that is why there's a flexibility, Whenever I go very fast, suddenly when I look at the faces of the people, I actually try to make myself a bit moderate. So as a speaker, you have the flexibility. When you find the faces of the speakers, listeners very radiant, you actually get a sort of encouragement. So naturally, the voice goes high. Actually, there seems to be a sort of commitment, conviction, confidence. And the information that is actually disseminated, that is actually spread out through speaking is easier to comprehend than writing. If I use a very difficult word, the way I had done yesterday, I think there is no scope for people to explain or people to seek an explanation. But when we are speaking, we actually provide. And the moment you look at the person who is sitting in the front row and you find that there is a sort of uneasiness, actually you change it. You actually use the word like sesquipedalian and suddenly you come, I mean lengthy sentences. I actually mean it is not about the ambivalence. It is not about the conflict. I mean, there are so many ways that a speaker has the flexibility. Speaking is more immediate. No, when you speak, you actually get the feedback instantly. But when you write, you do not get the feedback at the right time. Maybe many people will say that when we chat or when we do some sort of communication over WhatsApp, we do get it, but not all of them are every now and then sitting at such platforms. Maybe it will be delayed. But when you talk either over telephone or you talk even in a face-to-face situation, you find that the feedback comes all of a sudden the moment you look at their faces. Moreover, speaking has another advantage, and that advantage is that there is more scope for the validity of the message. I do remember that there are many instances when either you are at a negotiating table or you have gone for an MOU, you will find when the talk goes on, or even if there is a meeting, you actually may find that the person, whatever is spoken by the person, is actually reflected, whether it is agreed, disagreed, or there is an antagonistic feeling. Because your words and your body language, they actually have to be in communion with each other. That is why the message that you are transferring, or the message that you're passing, the validity of the message can be understood and can be comprehended by the friend. But then the title of the talk is Effective Speaking, meaning thereby there is something that actually hampers, that disturbs, no, that actually puts a barrier in terms of making our speaking effective. What are these things? Actually, most of the time, we are unaware of the emotive effects. When you speak, my dear friend, as a speaker, you do not know how it will be responded to emotionally by the listeners in front of you. So we are most of the time unaware of the emotive effects. That is why when you speak, most of the speakers, you will find that just in the beginning, they'll speak a very beautiful sentence. No, just in order to capture the attention of the listeners. We are not only unaware of the emotive effects as to the words that you use, how it will be responded to emotionally by the people, isn't it? Because there are people who are from different backgrounds, different ages, different languages, different sects, fine, different preferences, different beliefs, different faiths, fine. And then you are also unaware of the audience's perception and expectations. What do I mean by perception? I mean, when an invited speaker is called, the moment when the host introduces the speaker and talks about the speaker, then in the meantime the listeners are also actually trying to compare in the sense, compare with the sort of designation, compare with the sort of station that he comes from, compare with the sort of background that he has. So the perception of the audience, what is the audience's perception? Moreover, how do the audience think about this problem? I mean, the way you are explaining that problem, because many of us may have some set notions, set perceptions. And what are their expectations? Most of the speakers, they actually want to have something new in return after having listened to a talk. So we are also unaware of the audience's perceptions and expectations. And then another thing which at times becomes very detrimental, which actually creates a sort of impediment, is lack of confidence. If you come from a very dignified or an esteemed, reputed institution, actually people have high expectations of you. But you as a speaker, are you really committed? Do you have the confidence to say what you are saying? Are you really in a position that you know more and you are going to convince the people? So the lack of confidence is also, at times, it can hamper effective speaking. If I'm not aware of what I'm saying, naturally, I will fail. I will fritter away, my dear friend. And then, how have I organized my content? I mean, I'm going to speak on speaking. So do I know? Because I am simply expecting, I'm anticipating what my listeners might be thinking of or might be looking forward to getting. So naturally, as a speaker, we also need to have a proper organization of the content. Because if we have been given 1 hour, we need to understand how to prepare the content so that in the limited time, this content is delivered, my dear. Now, what are the ways to improve? First is self-awareness. Be aware of yourself. So when you become self-aware, what you do, you actually brush your subject well. You get to know all sorts of things, advancements that are there in that field. Then audience awareness, we have already discussed. And then practice. Even a person who is not capable of speaking effectively, if he practices and practices and practices, he will actually perfect his talk, he will perfect his speech, my dear friend. So practice is very important. Most of us do not give it that much attention as to why should I practice. And if you do not practice, especially the new ones who actually want to be as effective as celebrated speakers, they actually need to practice. And practice comes with experience, with years. And then there is one more important thing, criticism. Fine. When you have prepared a talk or when you are going to address a gathering, before that, have you really rehearsed that? And if you have rehearsed that, have you also taken the feedback of your people around you? I mean, if you take the feedback of a near kinsman or a relative, maybe you will not like it and you may cut him or write him off. But then you actually have to admit criticism at times. Many people may say that when you speak, your body language is very negative. Some people may also say that the control over words is not adequate. Some of them may say that you are not able to make a sort of proper eye contact with the listeners. Some of them may say that your voice is throughout monotonous. Some of them may say you do not bring variety into your speech. I mean, if they are criticizing, please take that criticism not by heart, but take that criticism in a positive manner and try to improvise, and you will find it changes. Nowadays, I have been telling, and I think you also might be telling your students, that if they have to give a talk, let the talk be recorded. Let the talk be recorded over their Android phones. Let them listen to it first. Fine. If they feel themselves that they are convinced, okay. But if they actually want to have others' opinion, let it be heard by some of their close friends who can actually provide him the honest feedback as to how the contents can be changed, how the style can be changed, how the body language can be changed. If all these feedback you can take, perhaps next time you are going to bring that into your methodology of speaking and you can really win. Fine, you can really win and you can really win hearts of people by it. For that, what actually we require is to understand that every communication, because speaking is one part of communication. I mean, there are 4 communication skills, and out of that, speaking is very important. Listening is also important, my dear friend. But we also need to understand through this model, as to how communication takes place. We have been saying that as a speaker, you become a sender and you try to formulate the message. When you are formulating the message, you cannot formulate it well if you are not aware of your audience. I often ask my hosts, my people who invite me, I often ask them who can be my listeners, who can be my audience, so that I can keep into consideration. I can, if I do not know, maybe I can anticipate in which condition they are, what is their reality. And when I'm framing the message, I'm framing my talk in such a manner that the words are very familiar, because you never know, in and between the speaker and the listener, something sometimes may go wrong. Sometimes there may be noise. When you are communicating in the classroom, you can find that there are many students who are actually whispering. And how do you react to that whispers? Sometimes you may find it that you get very angry when somebody whispers, but why can't we take it positive that my message has gone across and they are actually discussing it? They might also be finding some beautiful things in it. So noise can also be taken as a very positive feedback, my dear friend. And when you speak, you are not only speaking verbally, you are also communicating non-verbally. In a way, I have referred to those aspects of your body language and other things which are essential for a speaker to get home in before he goes to speak. Because the way, as a speaker, as a sender, you speak, the meaning can be infiltrated. The meaning can be derived from that by the listeners. And that is why we actually need to understand that communication is a process. And as I have said in the beginning, that there is an illusion in communication that everything has been communicated. No, my dear friend, something remains. And that is why at the end of the communication, when you receive the feedback can be received verbally, the feedback can be received non-verbally. In this FDP, you might be filling these forms by providing the feedback. But as a speaker, I can realize, had it been in a physical manner, by looking at the people's faces and expressions and eye behavior and other things, and by their behavior during the speech, how important my speech has become, how important my talk has become. Now, you might be thinking that Okay, writing is good, authoring is good, so submitting manuscripts is good, but at the workplace, do we really require speaking? Yes, my dear friend, you require speaking because the easiest thing is to speak. And for everything, people may not wait for the written document. No, majority of the tasks which are performed at the workplaces are by the way of speaking. And then when an agreement is signed, when an MOU is signed, then comes the written part, my dear friend. So what are these communication skills that you actually have to be careful of and that actually you need to be aware of? Presentation skills. Sometimes or the other, you are asked to give a presentation. You may be sent for negotiating a deal. There also your speaking will matter. You may also at times have to influence people in order to get a deal. And in order to influence people also, you need some amount of spoken skills. You also need not only to talk to one sort of people, but to talk to people of other cultures, other faiths, other backgrounds as well. So you also need to communicate cross-culturally, and there also your spoken matters. When you are negotiating, all you need to understand is you actually have to bring home a win-win conversation or a win-win situation, my dear friend. At times, you have to sell. You have to sell the product of your organization. You have to sell the policy. And when you sell, what are you doing? You are speaking, you are convincing by not only giving them supporting evidences or whatsoever. And for all these, at times when you're working in a team, because most of the jobs today are in a team, and team actually requires a proper communication to bring everyone or to make everyone cohesive, cohere with each other. And that is why these are the sort of spoken communication skills you require, my dear friend. But when you have done all sorts of homework, my dear friend, and you are going to communicate and imagine, because you, as I have said, in order to be effective, you need to have a concentration over the language that you are going to use. What sort of communication are you going to deliver or to show? Have a look at it, my dear friend. If you can read it just by sparing some time of yours, and you can also tell whether this communication is proper, whether it is a communication skills or a sort of communication that kills, you can well realize simply by having a look at the uses of words in this paragraph. Now see what the speaker says. Well, he said, in promulgating your esoteric cogitations and articulating superficial, sentimental, and psychological observations, beware of platitudinous ponderosity. Let your extemporaneous decantations and unpremeditated expatiations have intelligibility and veracity with rudamented and tachonical bombast. Sedulously avoid all polysyllable profundity, pusillanimous vacuity, pestiferous profanity, and similar transgressions. Now, if you are going to speak like this, who on earth will understand, my dear friend? Only a small portion of the crowd who might have the dictionary and thesaurus at their fingers and can understand, not everyone. So such a sort of communication will fail, and that is why we need to have the requisite communication skills or speaking skills so that we can be understood. Now, coming back to where we started from, because we need effective speaking. What are the various effective situations that at the workplace, whether you're working in an organization, in an institute, in a company, in a manufacturing unit, or wheresoever? So there are certain occasions which will actually demand you to speak. What are those different speaking situations? The very first is conversation. Conversation. I do not know how many of us are good at conversation. When it is actually in a family, you can converse well. But then in order to carve deals, you also need proper conversational skills. You cannot simply go with a purpose that you will simply bring home the MOU or bring home the agreement that actually requires the requisite skills of conversation. And when you converse, many people, you will find that they are not speaking. Many people are often very shy, very introvert. You might have had a very tough time in a train journey where your co-passenger will never talk at all with you. How boring it can be. And I will simply say that such people often lack the requisite conversational skills. If you spend at least, 6 hours or 10 hours with a co-passenger, how come you cannot speak? Meaning thereby you don't have those consciousness skills, my dear. So conversation is an art. And when you converse, no, again, many people, when they converse, what they do, they are only one way. I mean, they keep on speaking without allowing the other party to share their knowledge or their experience. So conversations should be both ways, where we need to take into the consideration the interest of both the parties. It can start on a very common note and can go on a long way. And finally, by the end of the journey, you have converted a stranger into a friend, my dear. And then comes group discussion. On most of the occasions, whether it is a meeting or say we are going to decide something new, there can at times be a group discussion. And in groups, you will find that there are people from all corners, all faiths, and all these people have different exposures, different experiences, and they have different sorts of knowledge also. So many of us simply do not speak because they feel that they will be exposed, their poor communication skills will be exposed. And if a newcomer, if a novice person, if those who join new, they continue with the same habit, perhaps in their lives, they will never be able to speak, my dear friend. Group discussion actually provides you a chance not only to communicate with others, but also to learn certain new things, new pieces of information, even new stylistics of speaking, my dear. And then comes the meeting. In meeting also the same thing happens, no? At least there are some people who never speak. And those people who never speak may also have a good amount of ideas, but they are so shy, they're so introvert that they do not speak. And that is how their real ideas actually become a sort of wastage, my dear. Then comes interview, which most of us are facing. No. And success in the interview, fine, it materializes first on the basis of your subject knowledge, and the second on the basis of how you speak, how you convince, how you persuade, how you are aware of, how you behave. And there are some other features also associated with which all of you know, my different. And then comes presentation. So I'll confine myself only to one or two because we have time always at our back. No, at my back I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near, and yonder all before us lie deserts of vast eternity. So we have to be aware of time, and hence we shall be talking about presentation, so that with the help of the presentation also you can take ideas as to how you can speak on different occasions with different sort of crowds, with different sort of people, different sort of multitude, and you can drive well your point. Now, is there a secret of speaking? Is speaking a secret art? Yes, but then it can be learned, as I have said in the beginning. How can one excel in speaking? No, the very first thing one actually requires is ideas. Fine. And ideas do not come just in a day. Ideas have helped helped mankind rule the world. It is only because of ideas that you become a saleable person, you become a distinct person, you become something distinctive. It is a distinctive quality when you have ideas. But ideas itself will not do. Ideas actually, as I said, in group discussion, many people will say, after the discussion is over, they will say that I wanted to say this, but I did not get the opportunity, my dear. Fine. Ideas actually have not to be kept within, they have to be expressed, they have actually to be delivered, they have actually to be articulated. Articulation is very important. The way you speak. What do I mean by articulation? By articulation, we mean you need to speak, and whatever you speak, you need to speak candidly, my dear friend. You have a written You have a written report with you, but how you're going to present that report so that you can convince the other parties, that is actually an art that depends upon the way of your speaking skill. Fine. Then comes pronunciation. Many people will say that they do not have the proper pronunciation, like the foreigners, like the Britishers, and like the Americans. There is no problem, my dear friends. Even if you can speak a word candidly, clearly, exactly, even if you can speak like an Indian, speak. Fine. There can be many words whose pronunciation you might not know, but then you can learn, provided you have the yearning to learn, provided you yearn to learn to earn and to unlearn your past mistakes, my dear friend. And then comes intonation. When we speak, we do not speak just in one tone, otherwise all of us will become monotonous. Fine. Nobody wants a speaker who is monotonous. You might have seen when some speaker speaks monotonously, many of the listeners often tend to sleep. So in your intonation, you actually need to see that there is a force in what you speak, and there is certain ups and downs that actually mesmerize the audience members and listeners so that they actually wish to go once again to listen such a sort of lecture. Why is it so, my dear friend? Because of the beautiful intonation of the speaker. We can also develop that intonation provided you provide some years and some months of practice. Are we really going to do that? And then comes silence and pauses. If a person speaks continuously without a stop, the listeners are put to a rest. And not only the rest, but there is a sort of unrest in them. And you can find it, you can gaze it, the way they're looking towards the door, the way they're looking at the clock, which is there. They are looking at their cell phones as to when the time will be over and this boring teacher or the boring lecturer will go from here. Why does that happen? Because we have not taken all these into consideration. What needs to be done is you actually need to provide some amount of breather. What is that breather? We'll discuss. But when you go to speak, you actually, suppose, imagine, you go to speak for the first time in your life, you will have some unusual feelings. And these unusual feelings may be in the form of dryness in your mouth. Suddenly the heartbeat will be very fast. There's a sinking feeling in the stomach, and there's a difficulty with abdominal control. All these actually are the symbols of nervousness, my dear. And what if a speaker becomes nervous? So does the speaker know that he's nervous? He knows he's nervous, but do the listeners also know that the speaker is nervous? I mean, many of the listeners may not know that the speaker is nervous unless and until the listeners actually listen to with apt attention and concentration. But if this nervousness is there, I often tell people, be happy that you are nervous. Fine. Have you ever seen a person who is sleeping getting nervous? No. A person who is awake gets nervous. When I say awake, I mean a person who realizes, who is actually careful, who is actually worried about his own image gets nervous. But then in nervousness, there is actually a booster. There's an image booster. The moment you become nervous, it actually boosts your energy. How? You can find it only through your body. Suddenly you can find that there's an adrenaline surge that is growing. You can feel it, right? You can feel it. And suddenly the hands will become tight, the jaws will become tight, and then excessively you feel surcharged. So this nervousness actually pumps you with a sort of extra energy. My dear friends, I have often been saying telling my students that if you become nervousness, if you come across this nervousness, be happy. But you have to control that nervousness. And in order to control that nervousness, think of something good, something beautiful, something imaginative that can help. No, some good experience, past experience. And when you have that feeling, tell yourself that, oh, Professor Sahula has invited me because I can speak well. Fine. So this pleasant feeling will drive away this nervousness, my dear friend. And you might be thinking that you are alone. You only become nervous. No, no, no. You are not alone. There are n number of people like you, my dear friend. Even careful speakers also become nervous at times. So you are not a loner, my dear friend. And I often say, ask yourself about some good things and tell yourself, खुशफहमियों में भी जीना एक कला है, कौन करता है presentation बला है. The meaning is that when you imagine that you are in a better condition, that is actually an art. And who says that presentation is an art of the coward? Presentation is a difficult task. Presentation is a torment. No, my dear friend. So let us tell ourselves that nervousness is natural, it is universal. One should actually try to tame nervousness, because even psychologists believe that nervousness actually helps you get an extra energy, an emergency energy. Fine. And then you will find that this adrenaline, which is pumped into your system, they actually make you more convinced, more determined. And you know, these people, these listeners, these audience members, they have little time to realize you are nervous. Of course, if you're too nervous, some of them may realize with the sort of expression which is there on your body language. But you have to fight nervousness, because we say you are in a condition of fighting or flighting, fight or flight situation. Many people want to run away, my dear friend, isn't it? So this is actually a sort of anxiety, and this anxiety actually creates an unpleasant feeling that is typically associated with worry. What will happen? What will happen, Virji? Will the earth crumble, or will the sky fall? And will the earth come to the turmoil? Nothing will happen, my dear friends. Think that everything will be fine, and everything will be fine. Tamso ma jyotirgamaya. Fine. Oh God, lead me from the darkness to the light. I'm actually feeling an amount of nervousness, but I know my subject well. If I tell myself that I know my subject well, I can drive home my point well. There is nothing in the world that can stop me, because I'm aware of my audience. So when you start feeling a little amount of nervousness, the very first thing that you need to do is, please provide a sort of smile. Cast a smile, and this smile is actually ease away. Even if you still are not able to control, take some little draft of water and tell yourself that all these people waiting here, these 700 people waiting here for me to listen, because they know that I can come true to their expectations. Fine. Think that they are friendly people. Fine. And even if I fail, this is not going to be the end of the world, my dear friend. I actually have to speak directly. I'm actually going to talk to them. And then in between, you can. Fine. Because you are aware of the audience's needs. You can relate certain things with the everyday lives. Many people say provide some humor also, but then the humor has to have its sort of relativity. So the very first thing that any careful or expert speaker does in the beginning is to have a control over the crowd. How to have a control over the crowd? By speaking something beautiful, right? By captivating their minds with some words, by asking certain questions, isn't it? And as you know, in Julius Caesar, you might have all known that Caesar was killed by Brutus, and Antony wanted to speak on the funeral. Antony was not given the chance. But anyway, he managed to speak. Everyone knew that Antony was Caesar's friend. So what will Antony say? But Antony had one mission in mind, to convert people to say that Caesar was not a traitor. Caesar was actually a patriot. And you know, the very first word that he said, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. And you see the language. That is why I say when you speak, language matters. And then he says, look at how he plays with the words. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. My purpose here is to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do leaves after them. The good is oft entered with their bones. So let it be with Caesar. And then, because he had been allowed to speak with the permission of the conspirators, he says, the noble Brutus had told you Caesar was ambitious. If it were so, it was a grievous fault, and grievously has Caesar answered it. Here under the leave of Brutus and the rest. And then again, time and again, he will say, for Brutus is an honorable man, so are they all. And these are some of the ways to captivate the crowd just at the beginning, when you are giving a speech or a presentation. But then remember, as I told you, that many of you will be nervous. You face this unusual feeling. And there are only a few people who can realize or experience with some feelings that are there on your body. Because however hard a person tries to hide his nervousness, these are actually written over our face, over our bodies. And rightly, as Freud says, he who has eyes to see and ears to convince ears to hear may convince that no mortal can keep a secret. If his lips are silent, if the person is not speaking, he's chatting with his fingertips. So the very amount of time that you are spending there thinking what to do, suddenly your hands are in action, and many people in the crowd will feel that you are nervous by it. There are certain measures to control we have already discussed. Please have a positive attitude and tell yourself that maybe this time I cannot be successful, but perfection is a misnomer. Even good people also may at times fail, isn't it? Fine. So tell yourself, and you will find that you will do better. Prepare an antidote. How? Because if somebody is well prepared, there is nothing that is as important as preparation. It is the best medicine. It is actually the best remedy. It is the best antidote. There are some other things that new people can practice, stress busters and all, fine. But those who are already experienced and those who are in this profession, they may also at times come across this situation, but then they can breathe deeply, start with a pause, speak slowly and distinctly, fine. And then there will sometimes a situation arise when you will forget, my dear friend, if you're not using this PowerPoint presentation or whatsoever. Even if you have this presentation, are you well versed with the presentation? Or are you simply reading the presentation? So you have to be very careful. So when you feel that you have forgotten something, please review. For example, many speakers you have heard saying, and finally, and having said that, let me now come to the crux of the discussion. And when he does that, it actually takes a little effort, but then you actually know what you are going to say. Now, when we talk about the presentations, there can be different sort of presentations depending upon the need, depending upon the audience, but we can categorize them into four. The first can be you are going to read from the text, or you are going to give a sort of memorizing. But if you memorize, you know what are its dangers. No. If you memorize everything, can you memorize everything? Can you memorize where you have to stop or where you have to be silent or where you have to give pause? You cannot. And for all these, when you are doing the preparation, you need to have it. But then most of us are not able to. So please don't memorize. Sometimes you may be given an impromptu talk. You may be asked to give an impromptu talk. I mean, without any preparation. And this is the most challenging and the most rewarding because everyone is in the same boat in this condition. And then comes the extemporaneous when everything is with you, the note cards, the PPTs, the charts, the graphs. So depending upon what sort of presentation you are going to give, then you have to decide. So once you know why you are going to give this presentation, please ask yourself, what is the purpose? The purpose of the presentation is to convince you that speaking is an art, my dear friend, and that can be learned. Who are my audience? Majority of these people are either from the colleges or universities or corporate world. So I know my audience well. How do I? Nobody has told me. I'm just anticipating. I'm thinking beforehand. And then am I using the visual aids. No, I'm not using visual aids, rather I'm actually using the PPTs. So how to go along with the PPTs that I have to master as a speaker, and then have I planned my presentation? I have been given 1 hour, and will I be able to say everything just in 1 hour? Yes, I have to time my presentation. And when you are timing your presentation, you are not only timing the content, you're also timing the audio visuals. And when you go to the particular point, my different, because nowadays many people say that slides are being read. No, only because the speaker is not prepared. The speaker has to have thorough knowledge of what is there in which slide. Fine. So when you go to that particular point, please explain with the help of a pointer or whatsoever. The aids, the visual aids, which you are mentioning, my friend, they actually have to be very specific. It should not be like modern art, where the listeners will simply be thinking about and will not be able to say what is actually required. So let your aids be very specific. And then I come to presentation plan. Please, three P's are very important. Prepare, practice, and perfect yourself by rehearsing your presentation. So when you are planning, you need to divide your presentation, fine? So beforehand, you are preparing your presentation, and then please bring spontaneity and animation, not the animations through PPTs and all, animation through your voice, animation through vocabulary, spontaneity. I mean, there should be a natural flow if it is actually recorded, or then we can see how your voice suddenly makes certain ups and downs. It is not monotonous. If you are actually making use of notes or slides or whatsoever, please give your eyes to the people to whom you are talking. Eye control is an art. Many people will say, I am not in a position to control my eye behavior. I mean, there's a technique. You can divide your crowd, no? Mentally divide your crowd into certain segments. Say, for example, there is one variety of crowd in which you are concentrating on one guy who is wearing a red dress. And that when you concentrate in that direction, the people of the same segment will be controlled. So please rotate your eye behavior, and through this eye behavior, you are also getting a feedback of the crowd behavior. So if you do that, I think your presentation plan has become successful. It is not essential that every now and then you should stuck yourself into your notes. You may require notes, but when you require notes, please see that you are prepared. What is there? You need to explain that. And from that, lift your head, look at the crowd. There are certain things that have to be remembered, my dear friend. What are these? When you go to speak, many people actually do not know where to stop, how to stop, in which manner to stop. So if it is in the form of a physical presentation, let one of your feet be ahead of another. Suddenly, if you practice that, you'll find that suddenly there's a bend in your body and you are actually a little bit bent. That actually gives the audience members an idea that you are very much immersed, drowned in your talk. You're very much prepared in your talk. All this can also be done when you're rehearsing your talk and you stand before a mirror and look at your own bodily postures and gestures. And when you reach the venue, if it is a physical presentation, so the very first look that you are going to give them should be a look of enthusiasm. From your facial expression, enthusiasm pours out, my dear friend, and that disseminates a sort of warmth, a sort of friendliness. Walk sprightly, feel relaxed, and avoid fidgeting. Sometimes what happens, people do not want to give their eyes to others. They avoid the eye contact, and such a speaker is considered not to be prepared, rather to be lost or to be nervous. So please do that. Your talk has got the verbal elements, but these verbal elements are also having certain things which we can call para language. When you articulate, as I mentioned earlier, you need to understand how many words per second do I speak? What is my volume? Fine. Is there an intonation? What is the quality? Fine. Many of us may not have a very beautiful quality of voice, but then this quality can be enhanced. Those who feel their voice is muffled, they can speak slowly in order to in order to be understood by people. And then as regards pronunciation, I have already said that you actually cannot follow each and every pronunciation of the Britishers and the Americans, my dear friend. So let us go to the received pronunciation, which have been provided to us with the help of the dictionary. If any word in the dictionary, and why for that matter, nowadays everyone has got a phone which has got the dictionary already in it. Go to that word, find, click it, listen to it, practice it. Not all of us are the sons of Ben Jonson. Fine. We actually can practice, and practice alone will make us perfect, my dear friend. And then comes intonation, because throughout you will not be speaking in the same tone. There'll be ups and downs. And when there are ups and downs, we call that intonation. Your tone may rise, your tone may fall. There may be a fall in the pitch of the voice. Sometimes you will be providing certain statements. Sometimes there'll be certain commands. Sometimes there'll be WH questions. So the tone will fall. But then when there is a request, fine. May I have your ears, please? You see, this is actually a rising tone. Yes, of course, rising tone. Sometimes you may also have a question. Well, Professor Bharat, I think I'm quite audible, aren't I? I'm putting a tag in order to get a sort of confirmation. My dear friends, I think I'm audible and I think I'm convincing, aren't I? Are you really listening to me, or are you lost in your own thoughts? Aren't you? Are you? Fine. So these are tags, and then volume. And then one has actually to adjust the volume according to the acoustic features of the room. You must check the gadgets well in advance. That is why most of the hosts provide you an opportunity to appear either 10 or 15 minutes before to check whether all the gadgets are working properly, whether you are able to share your slides, whether your voice is reachable, whether your video is also in the running mode or whatsoever. So all these are required. So when we come to intonation, we also need to understand that your intonation should also take in its account the silence and the pauses. Now, are they really required? Yes. Why many of us were very much delighted when our big B used to say, "Lock kar diya jaye," and there was a sort of suspense. Even with the person sitting in front of him used to think whether the question is right or wrong. So it was actually the quality of his voice, the way he situated the silence and the pauses. And suddenly he will become silent, and soon afterwards he will say, and the answer is correct. So like that, when we speak, we need to situate silence and pauses because they beautify our speech, they beautify our talk. And it is only an expert speaker who can situate silence and pauses. Pauses are shorter, silences are longer. So when you pause, you are not only giving a pause in the sentence, but you're also giving a resting time to yourself and resting time to the audience members who actually can interpret and analyze what you have said. It also provides you as a speaker to review all that you have said, my dear friend. So is the beauty of silence and pause in speaking. You might have found that when there's an interview, you should not only look at the facial expressions, but you should also look at how the speaker or how the interviewer and how the interviewee actually bring a sort of communion by situating silence and pauses in their talk. Again, if we simply keep on speaking, no, I think our talk will become monotonous. That is why what is required is a sort of coherence, is a sort of ordering, and that can be provided by the use of connectives. One sentence can be connected with other, one paragraph can be connected with other, and one stream of thought, one strand of thought, thread of thought can be connected with other by providing them, because audience members also want to know where they are. And by making use of connectives, you are actually providing them certain transitions when the person says, first, I will talk about this. Secondly, I'll also be throwing some light on the relevance of speaking in the modern times. And finally, and before I come to the end of my talk, I will rather emphasize, so what are all these? You are actually weaving your thoughts with the help of the connectives. And these signposts indicate where the presenter is. And as listeners, do we not feel very delighted when the speaker says, and the last part of my presentation will be, or before I conclude, you'll find they actually feel a sort of breather, they actually feel a sort of relief. Of course, when you are speaking, apart from all your qualities of speaking, you ought to be very sensitive to culture. Fine, whether you are writing or speaking. So consciousness, as I said, consciousness skills. So this consciousness skills also comprises your sensitivity towards culture. When you are communicating across culture, my dear friends, you need to understand to which culture I'm communicating, because when we communicate in a different culture or the other person communicates with us, we need to understand what are their needs, why they believe more in non-verbal, why somebody believes more in verbal, because people in the world are divided into two cultures, high and low context culture. And people of the high context culture, they are often intuitive, very serious. They actually think from within. They actually are contemplative, and they will give more stress on non-verbals and meaning to physical and social setting also. That is why a meeting is fixed or a talk is fixed. You will find the venue and the way the chairs are arranged depending upon the different demands of different situations. But people in the low context culture, they actually are more logical. So when you are communicating with them, speaking with them, you have to be very logical. No circumlocutions needed there, no roundabout expressions needed there. And these people value individualism, not group. So you need to be aware of all these realities. My dear friend, speaking can take many lectures, but I have tried my level best to summarize everything just in 1 hour. And that is why I have taken the trouble of packing all these things in a very short, simple, and subtle way. There are certain roadblocks that you must also think about. Are you unable to organize your thoughts? So before you speak, please organize your thoughts. How to begin the very first sentence, how to have a control over the crowd. Then vocabulary, I mean your words, sentences, let sentences be short. In writing, you can go for longer sentences also, but in spoken, it is always better to have smaller sentences because they provide a relief to the listeners. Paragraphs also need to be shorter when you are speaking on one particular topic. Suddenly you make a signpost and make a switchover. And then signpost is important because that will provide a sort of breather or a relief. Before you start, now having done all that, before you start, think of these things. To whom am I speaking? Have I done my homework properly? Have my content been properly divided? Which tools are required? Is my language effective? Am I aware of time? Yes, I'm aware of time. How good or bad is my voice? If my voice is very bad, I'll speak slowly and distinctly. And am I also able to use nonverbals? Of course, in an online mode, we are not able to, and that is why we have to take more efforts on the part of our voice. There are certain eyes that are required. First is introspection. What will be, we must think what my talk will do. Imagine that all these people are very friendly. They are all my friends. They also have been comparing their own situation when they might have been able to speak for the first time. Innovation. Am I really innovative? Have I been able to do justice to my crowd by bringing some innovative ideas or style? Do I imitate somebody? If you imitate somebody, you must imitate him full or you must imitate him in parts, but do not over imitate. And then finally, if I imitate somebody else, how do I implement it in my talk? So having said all this, let us remember before you go to deliver a talk, the very first mantra is prepare thoroughly. Don't think that you will go and deliver. Rehearse repeatedly. Give rehearsals, no? Before a group of friends, before a mirror, fine, or you get it recorded. Time yourself. How much time I'm able to speak on this particular topic? If it is a 1 hour talk, am I exceeding or do I run sort of ideas only in 20 minutes? Request a lectern if it is a physical form of talk. Request a lectern because that will also save you from the nervousness which can be felt by the front benchers. And then practice stress reduction, my dear friend. There are certain tips. When you begin with a pause. Present the first sentence from your memory. Maintain eye contact. Have a control over your voice and vocabulary. At times, put your brakes on by providing silence and pauses. If you really want to move, move naturally, but don't move too often. Visual aids, if you are going to do, am I not audible? Hello? Anjali says no voice.
Maybe
Sir, you are audible.
You're audible.
Okay, so Anjali, please check your gadgets. So avoid digressions, fine. Avoid digression, things that actually deviate you, things actually that takes away your attention. So please concentrate on that. You have to control over it. And finally, summarize your main points. There's certain precautions that you need to take. Don't read your presentation. Don't memorize. Don't give a very long introduction, fine. And don't give verbal fireworks, the one that was there when I said, is it communication skills or communication kills? Don't crowd your aid, fine, and then avoid frowning, fine, don't frown, rather face the crowd. Keep speaking in case you are using blackboards, in case you are using some other gadgets. If you're using blackboards, please keep writing and speaking at the same time. Not that you're lost in speaking only and you do not have, you're lost in writing and you're not able to speak. Also have sympathy for the crowd, which I have now, and signal. So let me also signal that before we come to the end of this presentation, I think I have been able to reassure you, my dear friends, that speaking is an art. It can be learned. And when you have completed or presented or finished your talk, if you have the handouts, please distribute. Also take questions. And if somebody asks questions, don't feel intimidated, threatened. Take the questions gladly. Many of the questions will be able to answer, but those who will not be able to answer, you can always take time or say that you can discuss it sometime later or through mails or whatsoever. End with a summary and appreciation. And let me end, my dear friend, with a summary and appreciation that speaking is an art. It requires years and years of practice. It can be learned. And once you have learned one aspect of presentation, I think in other forms of speaking also, you will do well, my dear friend, because as Emerson says, all the great speakers were bad speakers at first. So if I can speak well, if you can speak well, maybe sometime or the other, you were or I was not a good speaker. After years and years of trouble, struggle, and rehearsal, and then practice, we have been able to perfect ourselves. But always believe, no man is perfect. Perfection is always a misnomer. The more you try, fine. Once you start feeling that you are perfect, you are a gone case. So always let some room be there that in the next presentation, I'll even do better than what I have done. Thank you very much. And now is the time that I actually wait for questions, my dear friend. And if you have questions, please, you can ask questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We are looking. Bharat.
Yes, sir, I'm here. Participant, if you have any questions, you please raise it, write it
There are,
here.
yeah, there are many lines for appreciation for sir, but I don't see
Please
the
read.
questions.
There is one. There is a one.
Sir, one person would like to know your experience and any modern tools to improve language and communication skills.
Okay. There is no set formula, rather it is actually a practice. No tool can make you a better speaker than yourself. Fine? Unless and until you have the conviction and you have the desire. Because speaking is speaking only. Tools cannot help. Fine? Unless and until you practice every day before every presentation, only then you can come to have a sort of satisfaction. And you know, the real appreciation or the perfection lies on the faces of your crowd. The crowd only gives a testimony to as to how and what sort of presentation have you given. So my dear friends, there is no shortcut. Please practice, practice, practice. That will help you perfect yourself. Thank you.
Yes, sir. We are not in a.
There's another question, sir.
Yes,
How
yes,
to-
please.
How to make public speaking more effective?
Okay. Actually, you know, when we talk about public speaking, there are different sorts of speaking. First, you have to understand what sort of public speaking. Are you going for a speech? If you're going for a speech, what sort of speech? Introductory speech, valedictory speech, address speech, fine? Or you are going to give a farewell speech, or if you're going to participate in a GD, what sort of GD? Case GD, topic GD. If you're going for a meeting, what sort of meeting? So all these, you know, they actually require how you can, you know, but then majority of the speaking situations requires the art of persuasive speaking. And persuasive speaking is not manipulative speaking, rather, it is a sort of speaking through which you inform, but you inform in such a manner that everyone can understand. And there comes to your aid your language, your style, your other non-verbal features, your consciousness skills, which I will once again underline. Because you know, many people often get nervous when they have to give a public speech or when they are exposed to public speaking. One psychologist goes to the amount of saying that only 5 to 8% people, they are keyed up, they are nervous, fine? But when one realizes that one is nervous, meaning thereby he had started feeling a sort of generation that I need to overcome and I need to succeed, because you feel about your own image and you go an extra mile.
There's another question that has come, sir. The participant is asking that they teach engineering students.
I have got it. I have got it. Suggest some techniques to develop interest and practice learning process. Yes. When you teach engineering, you know, you have several tools with you. But using those tools depends upon your ability to speak. How? You know, you have application. And with the application, and if you're going to teach them this application, don't you need speaking skills? Because if you simply say that this is this and we are going to do that, nobody will understand. Actually, put some masala into it. Fine? Put some masala into it. My dear friends, all of us might be thinking how this cell phone came to be in use. But there was a time, modern day guys do not know that earlier we had to have a trunk call in order to send our message, to talk to people. And when you interact, when you integrate the past and the present, they'll actually feel delighted. If I had to sell a chalk, my dear friend, suppose I'm telling them that this is a chalk. If I say this is chalk, no one will listen. I'll have to say, put the chalk behind and say, have you ever realized, my dear friends, that in classroom also we can create history? You might be thinking that history can be created only with wars, bullets, horses, cavalries. No, as teachers, we create history with the help of the chalk. Fine. Now say, I'm going to tell them about the chalk, but I have actually created a sort of aura, and then all of their eyes are curious as to what he's going to talk about, creating history in the classroom. Teachers create history in the classroom in black and white. Yes, Mr. Engineering students, have I been able to convince you?
So there's another question. Any short-term courses on speech therapy to improve voice quality?
Nowadays, there are many software also available. Fine. There are many softwares available. If you can, there are many resources also available. You can Google and just go through, There are n number of things. Suppose you want to learn pronunciation, go to the relevant sites. You'll get quite a good number of things are there. Because all of our, but again, are you able to practice? In most of the engineering colleges, thanks to them that they have a language laboratory. Are they being used properly? Are students coming to the language lab? If they come to the language lab, we have several softwares through which they can also speak, get recorded, and also come across the accuracy level which are there. Maybe we are not that accurate, but at least we will find changes after certain time period. So please visit the language labs, visit the websites. There are n number of things available there. We are living in a technological world. Everything is there. Just Google. Yes.
Okay. So, Vinit sir, shall we? Haridos sir is waiting.
Few questions, sir, if we get.
Yes, yes.
I request your answers.
Somebody says, my English is poor. How do I improve it? My first answer to you is, do you read an English daily every day? I think majority of us do not do. But when you do that, develop the habit of reading at least one English newspaper every day, the same English newspaper. If you're reading the Times of India, read it continuously for 3 months. If you come across some difficult words, mark them, find out the dictionary meaning, see the uses, and when next time you try to use it, use it among your group of friends, and day by day you will improve. Nothing is impossible. Fine. And nowadays, there's so many English channels also available. Fine. There are many English news channels also available. I think if people can participate in that, they can really do wonders. Kindly suggest things that need to be followed during the presentation of research paper. Yes, this has actually become very important nowadays because most of the conferences are being online and people find it very difficult to present their research papers. In many conferences where I have chaired sessions, I have also been surprised that they give 10 to 15 minutes. My dear friends, if that is the question, if that is the situation, now prepare the gist of your presentation. Prepare the gist of your research and try to say what are the findings. And then when the questioner is that, answer to the questions and you will be able to do that successfully. There is no need to read the entire paper. Fine? Try to bring out the crux of the paper and present it before them. Maybe in 10 or 15 minutes, you can provide 3 or 4 or 5 slides, but they should relate to your findings, the topic, whatever is the topic, the process and the findings. And I think in question answer session, you get more exposure.
Yes, sir. Right, sir. So
Any other
thank you very
questions?
much, sir, for your, yeah. Ravi?
Yes, I think we can thank sir.
Okay. If there are no questions, let us all thank Professor Vinod Kumar sir for his devoting time to our program and addressing all of us and teaching us a few of the very important aspects of writing and speaking. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank
We
you.
hope
Thank you
that,
very much. My thanks
we
are due
hope
to all the
exhaust you.
organizers.
Yeah. Yes, thank you very much. We
And
hope that
thanks to all the participants.
yes, sir. We hope that next time also you oblige us. If we
I am at your disposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Sir.
Sir, we also have Dr. Pratap Haridas now joining from IT Madras. He is a material.
Oh, great, great.
Professor
Namaskar.
Haridas, Professor Vinod Kumar belongs to Humanities in IIT Roorkee.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine. How are you?
Doing fine. A very nice talk. I heard most of the second part of it. I think I didn't start at the beginning. Very nice.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Thank you, Professor
I'll
Vinod,
not be biting over your time because I have taken a lot of time. I'm sorry.
No problem. No problem.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Thank you very
please,
much, sir.
all the
Thank
best.
you very
All the
much.
best for your
Thank you
talk.
very much.
Thank you. Sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm permitted to leave.
Sure, sir. Thanks a lot. Welcome, sir. Very good morning, Professor Jalsa. I am Vineet Sahula. I have my colleagues from NIT Patna. He's a chief investigator of AICT Academy there, Dr. Bharat Gupta.
Hello.
Me, Vineet Sahula and Dr. Ravi Madila, we are at MNIT Jaipur. We belong to ECE department here. So, Bharat. So if you permit, I will just read your brief bio.
Okay.
Yeah, let's welcome Professor Pratap Haridas, all the participants. On your behalf, I welcome him. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Is professor in metallurgical and material science at IIT Madras currently. He obtained PhD in material science in 1999 from University of Wisconsin-Madison, USA. He is a BTech from IIT Madras itself in year 1992 in metallurgical engineering. He has varied experience. At least for 2-3 years, he has been senior scientist in Plug Power Inc., Latham, New York and US. And later he shifted to IIT Madras as a faculty and been there for last 20 years. His research activities are into materials, technology for fuel cells, synthesis, characterization and use of carbon nanomaterials, and development of assistive devices. I think this is much more humanity and wide scope for assistive devices. He has guided 5 PhD to completion and 5 are ongoing. He has guided 5 MS theses to completion and many more ongoing. And he has also guided 20 MTech theses to completion. He holds several US patents and he is also waiting for confirmation for a applied patent in US. Professor Pratap Haridas. He will be guiding us for technique for good technical writing and presentation skill. Sir, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me in this talk. Let me share my screen here. Okay, I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay, so right, so we will today I'm going to talk about technical presentation, and along the way I'll also talk about technical writing. You had a talk a little while earlier about just the presentation part in general and how you talk, how you present at various places. If you're an engineer or a scientist you often have to make presentations that are about technical content. And so this is about a technical presentation and what you do, what you don't. So this is a outline. So we will talk about technical presentations versus journal paper, which is technical writing. We will talk something about constraints that we have when we make such a activity, we participate in such an activity. We will talk about how you connect with your audience. Then I'll talk something about illustrations, and finally we will summarize. Through this presentation, there will be some slides which will tell you what's the correct way of doing something. So in that case, I will put this tick mark that you see here, this green tick mark I will put, indicating that's the correct way to do something. And or otherwise, I will put this red stop sign in some slide, which is the wrong example, so to speak. So I will put that so that it's clear to you that that's not what we want to do. And it's an example of what we don't want to do. So that's the idea. So first of all, it is good in a technical presentation. In this presentation itself, I will show you some of the, I will follow many of the ideas that I'm going to tell you through this presentation itself. So, excuse me. So one of the first things that we want to do in a technical presentation is to have an outline. And that's what you see here. An outline is very important because it sort of tells people what are all the things you're going to touch upon. And therefore it gives them two things. One, it gives them an idea of where you are in your talk, and it also alerts them to what it is that they should pay attention to. So one of the things that is common between a technical presentation and maybe a journal paper is that you cannot expect everyone to be interested in everything you're trying to say. So they will be interested in different things. You yourselves, when you read a paper or a article somewhere, only specific parts of that article will be of interest to you. You may not find everything in it interesting, and that is fine, because you are reading it or you are listening to the presentation with a particular purpose in mind. You are maybe trying to do some experiment, or you're trying to understand why one experiment didn't go correctly, or whatever it is. So there's something in your mind which is why you are trying to read that, and therefore there may be a particular aspect of it that you are interested in, not everything. So an outline is very useful, and it is especially in a technical presentation, it is nice to periodically show the outline, indicating where you are in the presentation. Again, depends on the tool. I think in this workshop, you're going to have a lot more presentation on some tools that you will use. So in some tools, this outline is it shows up as tabs on the top, and that therefore you don't have to keep re-showing this slide. They will automatically know from the tab at the top that you are now in the second part of the talk or the third part of the talk, and so on. So, okay, so we will get on to the first part of our talk, which is technical presentation versus journal paper. So here you can see I have highlighted it, and that's the point I'm going to talk about with respect to whatever is there in this outline. So what is a journal paper? Okay, so a journal paper, and what is special about a journal paper? What is interesting about a journal paper? First thing is, a journal paper is a one-time activity. Okay, so it is a one-time activity in multiple ways. First of all, journals will tell you very clearly that if you have already published this information in some other journal, you should not publish it here. So that is one thing. And it's a one-time thing. You write it up, you send it, and then let's say after some review process, it eventually gets accepted. That's it, you're done. I mean, there is no scope to write the same paper a second time and third time and so on. So why is that important? We'll see that in just a moment when we talk of a presentation, but this is an aspect of journal paper. Often it has a very formal structure, and this is important. It has a formal structure. More importantly, it has minimal flexibility. So what happens is, if you want to publish in a journal, you have to go look at least a few papers in that journal which were published recently, and also are their guidelines. You will find that they will expect you to write it in a certain format. They may have some word limit. They may have some number of figures as a limit. They may say not more than 5 figures. They will have some resolution requirement. They will say, first you should show your analysis. Later you should show your experimental setup. Others will say, no, first you write your introduction, then you write your experimental section, then you write your results and discussion. So they will have a format. Each journal has a format. And if you want to publish in the journal, at the very least, you should meet that format. If you don't meet that format, they will not look at your publication. So that is one. The next thing is, when you are talking of a journal paper, it is peer reviewed, meaning it is not simply a question of you just send it to the journal and they just put it on their site. They will actually send your paper to 2 or 3 other experts in the field, and they are people you don't know. They are some other person that you don't know. Those people are going to look at your presentation, and then those people are going to what shall I say, give their opinion whether this is a acceptable paper or not acceptable paper with respect to the journal. They will say this is new work. No, this is not new work. If they say it is not new work, then they will not, the journal will not publish. They are usually these are called referees. So they will read your paper and they say, in this area nobody else has worked in this particular topic, so it is new work. Not only it is new work, the result they have obtained is important. So they will give some comments like this. If they give these kinds of positive comments, your paper gets accepted in that journal, and after they indicate your acceptance, it gets published in the journal. So it has a formal structure and it is peer reviewed. This idea that this peer means somebody who is like you in the same field is called a peer. Another researcher in your field is called a peer. So maybe that person's paper may come to you. You never know. So that is how the process happens. So you peer review is done, and after that it gets published. Now this adds to the repository of knowledge in the area, body of knowledge in the area. So when people look back at the and they want to understand what are all the things that people have, other scientists have explored in this area, your paper will be one of those things that people will look at. Okay, and see that, oh, okay, so they have somebody worked on this area, somebody worked on that area. Maybe let's say you're working on batteries, they will say that different people worked on, somebody worked on the casing of the battery, someone worked on the anode, somebody worked on the cathode, somebody worked on the electrolyte, things like that. So this is how the process happens. Important thing about a journal paper is that it is not interactive. In other words, you write something, you send it to the journal, they publish it, and after that there is no interaction. There is nobody telling you, I didn't understand that part of that work, can you explain again? And you don't write another 1 page explaining it. And it doesn't work that way. You put it out and it is over. It's done. There is no interaction in it. Similarly, there is no control on the audience. You have no idea who reads that paper. So maybe it is sitting in a library. Maybe a senior scientist reads the paper. Maybe a college student reads the paper. Maybe someday a family is visiting the library, and some school kid is just curious why there are such big books in the library, and pulls out a big book and opens some page randomly, and it happens to be your paper. So a school a school kid may be reading your paper, and so on. So we have no control on the audience that reads the paper. So these are all things associated with technical writing, which we have to be careful about. Technical presentation, on the other hand, like unlike technical, writing or journal paper writing, I pointed out that this is a one-time activity. Technical presentation, on the other hand, is an event, and therefore can be repeated. It is not a one-time activity. It can be several times. You can be making a presentation on the topic any number of times, hundreds of times you may make a presentation on the topic. So it is an event, and therefore it can be repeated. There is significant flexibility in the structure. Unlike a journal paper, there is significant flexibility. You can change it any which way you want. Mostly you are in charge of the presentation. You can do whatever you want with it. Sometimes you are presenting in an organization where they would have given you some structure, but generally there is no structure. They'll at most they'll give you some time limit, they give you a topic, and then you present. So there's significant flexibility, lot of flexibility. It is not peer reviewed, so nobody, you don't have to go and make your presentation in front of 3 people, get their approval, and only then present in front of the larger audience. It doesn't work that way. You will present in front of your school, your college, your organization. You present in front of, depending on what you're doing, you may present in front of the elected representatives of the state or of the government. Any place you may be presenting. So there is no peer review. Nobody is checking your presentation before you present there. Excuse me. It is interactive, which means at any time during your talk, somebody can ask a question. So people can ask you questions during the talk, people can ask you questions after the talk. So again, that little bit maybe depending on the occasion, you may have more, less or more flexibility with respect to this. And finally, there is a specific audience on each occasion. Okay, so this is something that we have to get used to. Again, like I said, you may be called to present in front of elected representatives, then you know that the audience is elected representatives. You may be asked to present in front of a college, these are, fifth year mechanical, fourth year mechanical engineering students that you are presenting in front of. Maybe one day you visit your hometown and you visit your school, and your school principal very enthusiastically says, why don't you give a talk in the school about the work you do? So you are going to see school children, maybe all the way from 5th standard to 12th standard, maybe there in your audience. So the audience is different. Each time it may be different. So we will now look at some constraints. We spoke about technical presentation versus journal paper. I will touch upon some of those points again when we start looking at constraints. The main constraints are audience and duration for a technical presentation. So what is the speciality about the audience? There are 2 points to remember when you gauge what your audience is. First of all, what is their background? I was just telling you, you could be presenting in front of elected representatives, a set of scientists, you could present to doctors, you could present to college students, you could present to school students. So you should know what is their background. Why is this important? Because then you will explain the terms that you are using with the appropriate level of detail. So there may be a term which is very familiar to a mechanical engineer, which will not be familiar to a doctor. So if you are presenting in front of a mechanical engineering crowd, you don't have to explain the term. If you are presenting in front of a crowd of doctors, they are also very well educated, but this is not their field, so that is a term that they don't know. So you should explain the term to them. Then they understand that they understand your talk better. At the end of the day, you are presenting something. There are people in front of you. You want that whole process to be beneficial. Somebody should benefit from it. There should be some transfer of knowledge as part of the process. So they should gain. So you want to make sure that they understand what you're talking about, not just stand there and listen to you list out a lot of big sounding words and then they leave. So that is totally not the purpose of a talk. So you want to make sure that they understand, and to make sure that they understand, one very important input for you is what is their background. So you can explain with the examples that you pick when you explain will depend on the crowd. So you can pick something which is more commonplace, which is a household thing, as an example, if you're talking to school children. So you can expect in their house they might have seen this. You should take that example, not something that is there only inside high speed car or something which and you're saying, have you seen that spark plug, have you seen this, have you that? Nobody would have seen all that. So knowing their background is very important. Next thing is, why are they watching? So if you're presenting because it is your examination, you know that they're watching to evaluate you. If you're presenting to a funding agency, you know that they're watching to decide whether or not to fund you. You're presenting to elected representatives, maybe they're going to make a policy decision based on what you are presenting. So you have to keep this in mind so that you emphasize the right points at each time. So if it is some funding agency, you're going to emphasize what is it new that you're going to be doing in your work. If it is elected representatives, you're going to tell them how well established some particular discovery is and why is that important for the representatives to know, so that the policy that they make a decision on makes sure that they are doing it right or something like that. So that is why you should know why they are watching, so that you can emphasize the right kind of detail. Duration is another very important thing, which I think any presenter, and certainly a person making a technical presentation, should be in command of. So a slide a minute is a very good guideline for you to have. It's just a guideline. Basically, you don't want to keep flipping. I have attended presentations where I see sometimes students, they have a 20-minute presentation. They will come with 60 slides, 50, 60 slides, maybe even more. And they'll keep on hitting enter, 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 enter. So you keep on seeing slides going by so fast, you can't see anything on what is on the slide. You need some time to see what is on the slide, to understand what is on the slide. Only then you're really gaining anything in the process. So try to ensure that you don't have more than a slide a minute. The other very important thing that you should learn and become good at is the ability to adjust the duration of the presentation. Okay, so this is very important, and it will make a huge difference in how much of an impression you make on your audience. So let us say you are making a you are a scientist in a big company, and you go there and you make a presentation. Now, and your CEO, Chief Executive Officer, is listening to the presentation. Suddenly, and let's say everybody has been given 15 minutes to present their work. You just started. You are barely like 2 slides into your talk. You're only 2 minutes into your talk, and CEO gets a call, and he says, "No, I don't have 15 minutes now. I have to leave in the next 5 minutes. So tell me what you have done in 5 minutes." That moment you should know how to adjust your talk, which you originally planned for 15 minutes. You should know how to move through your slides so that you emphasize the right level of detail and complete it in 5 minutes. Okay, you should know that, okay, the next 2 slides are not so important, I will not spend time on them. The 4th slide is important, I will spend time on it. Then I will skip the next 2 slides. I'll just very briefly highlight that we have made it. I will not tell them how I was also going to tell them how I made it. I'm not going to tell how I made it. I'm simply going to say, as you can see from this image, we made the prototype. That's all I'm going to say now to save time, because it is more important for me to tell what the prototype is capable of. So I will emphasize, spend time on the slide where I'm saying that, previous versions of this product were unable to do 1, 2, 3, 4. The new prototype that we have made, because we have incorporated certain features, is actually able to do 1, 2, 3, 4, which is very important for our customers. So that is the most important point that you want to convey to the Chief Executive Officer before he leaves your meeting, so that he knows that, yes, my team has actually made this product, because in his mind he wants to know where is the next product, when is it going to come out, what have we accomplished, are we closer to meeting the customer requirements. He or she wants to know that. That is the important point that they want to know. And so you had 15 minutes to say all that. So in that 15 minutes, you could have gone into the great details of how you made it and how it happened and all that. But no, they only have give you 5 minutes. So you emphasize this point, because this is the point that they want. And this is the point you should get to. So this ability to think like that on your feet. Okay, they want in 5 minutes. I'm going to just skip these slides. That is the most important point I want to convey to the CEO. So let me just make sure that that point is conveyed properly. And he has enough time to understand that point. So I have to give him time to understand that point. So let me not waste time on other things. So this is very important. Most students, most people who are presenting in their early days of presentation are unable to do this. And it comes simply based on practice and confidence. This is all it is. Practice and confidence. Confidence with your material. You should know the material you're presenting very well, and you should feel comfortable presenting it. So that is why, as the previous speaker mentioned, practice it in front of your friends, practice it, especially if you're a new presenter, practice it in front of your friends, in front of your house, family, or whatever. They may not understand everything you say, but you practice. Then when you hear the words coming out of your mouth, you get the comfort level that, yes, I'm able to explain this well. I'm able to explain that well. I am not able to explain this particular thing properly. So you say this. So this is how you should do. And if you are able to do this, you will find yourself very successful. I have often attended meetings where we tell the student that they are overshooting time. We tell them, no, you have to finish. Now we only have 2 more minutes, you finish. They are not able to change anything. They simply nod their head and they'll say, yes, I will finish in 2 minutes, but they will continue. They will continue because they don't know how to close. They still have 10 slides to go. They don't know how to adjust the 10 slides so that in 2 minutes they can finish. They don't know. They will still go the full 10 slides without stopping. They will simply go to the next slide, then the next slide, the next slide. They just are unable to think like that. Let me just go to the 6th slide, then 10th slide, and then I'll be done. Then they are not able to think like that. So this is very important. Okay, so now we will talk about connecting with your audience. We spoke about how technical presentation is different from a journal paper, and what constraints you have about audience and duration. Now we have come to the middle of our talk, which is connecting with your audience. You can see here, I'm again flashing the outline slide, so you know where I am in the talk. So how do you connect or disconnect from the audience? So the first thing is, how busy is your slide? So you can see right on top, I have put a no sign. So this is not how your slide should be. Okay, so this is not how your slide should be, because you see in this slide, there is so many things here. There is a schematic here, there is a photo down here, there are some electron microscope images here, there are some regular camera images here, there is text below all of these images. Additionally, I have put property information here, lot of stuff here. So this is from my work. I just wanted to put it all together just to show you how you should not show things. This is just too much stuff in a slide. Technically, you can say, yeah, it's all connected. Yeah, it is all connected. If you're doing a poster, maybe you can do it this way, because after all, in a single display, you want to show everything. But in a presentation, this is just too busy a slide. Nobody knows which part of this they should pay attention to. It simply shows that you have done some work. That's it. It doesn't convey anything. So this is not how you should do it. So your audience will get lost, will not be able to connect with what you say if you keep showing slides that are too busy. So don't do that. Also, in technical presentations, be a little conservative. Don't use too many special effects. All our PowerPoint, etc., have special effects. So you can see here plenty of special effects, right? All this is easily doable in PowerPoint or any of the other software, right? So you can see that again. Now, first time speakers will be tempted to use all this, because it is nice, it looks very nice and interesting and all that. But when you are making regular presentations to a regular audience, this is usually very distracting, particularly for a technical presentation. A technical presentation does not have to be boring. That is not the idea. But what is interesting in your presentation should be based on the content of the presentation, not based on all these special effects which are flying in from the left, flying in from the right, turning upside down, turning red, different colors. So avoid all that as much as possible. Keep it simple, keep it straight. You can use a few special effects if that helps you emphasize some point. But other than that, try not to do it. Keep it a little bit on the blander side. That is fine. Okay, here is another thing that we don't want to do. So you can see here again, I have put the don't do it sign out here, and that is reading from a slide. So here I'm saying, let me say again, from my area of work, I'm showing fuel cell stack development. Okay, so it is not at all unusual to see first time presenters or people who are not yet learning, who have not yet learned how to present properly. It is quite common to see them show a slide like this and simply read out from the slide. They will start short-term goals. Short-term goals, it is important to demonstrate scale-up of single cells on a test facility. Smaller 50 centimeter square cells often perform significantly different relative to larger cells such as 400 centimeter square cells. Systematic testing at a single cell level is necessary to identify the sources of such differences and to compensate for the same. This is how they will keep reading. They'll simply start reading from the top and read all the way to the bottom. So this is a very poor way of making a presentation. This is a very simple way of, this is a poor way of making a presentation. Instead, you should only have the key points here, so that you can use that to explain more. So for example, the same slide, I will show you what is a better way of doing it. So same slide, I have this. First of all, this text is too small for you to read. This is much more readable. I simply have here again 6 points, 3 under short-term goals and 3 under long-term goals. Same thing was there here also. Short-term goals, there are 3. Long-term goals, there were 3. Except that I wrote the whole thing in a sentence here. Here I only have the key point. Scale up of single cells, scale up of a stack, demonstration of stack as a standalone unit, and so on. So I can look at this slide and there are only 3 points, and I simply say, yes, one of the short-term goals is to scale up of the scale up of single cells. Normally, the single cell is a smaller cell of 10 centimeter square area, but we want eventually the product should have a cell of the size of 50 centimeter square or 100 centimeter square. So we need to study what happens to the cell as it goes from 1 centimeter square to 50 centimeter square or 100 centimeter square. Is there a drop in performance? Is there a way to ensure that the performance remains the same? So all of this I can say simply using that first bullet point, scale up of single cells. So this gives the audience something specific to look at, and then they get to hear you say more details about it. So that's a much better way of saying it than doing something like this. So this is the right thing. You can see here I put a tick mark out here. Okay, so now we will come to illustrations, which is the other important part of our talk. You can see I'm now towards the later part of my talk. So what is important about illustration? The important things are to first of all choose the right type of illustration and to pay attention to details. Both of these we will look at. What do we mean by saying choose the right type of illustration? So the types of illustration include tables, graphs, photographs, drawings, and schematics. These are all different. These are all very different. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir, we can.
Yeah,
We
okay.
can.
We can hear you.
Yeah, sure. So types of illustration. So tables, graphs, photographs, drawings, and schematics. So what is the difference between? So when you make a presentation or even a journal document, you can select between these, and each of them has certain strengths and certain weaknesses. So it depends on what you are trying to do that you should select one of these. So I will give you an example. So a table is very good at giving a very specific value. So supposing I want to indicate the interatomic distance. So that is a very specific value, and often the experiments will help you give the interatomic distance down to like 3 decimal places, 4 decimal places, and so on. And maybe the previous best estimate of it was at 2 decimal places. You have made an estimate at 3 decimal places. So the exact value is important. So a table is a good way of giving the exact value. Even there is certain better ways of doing it. So you're having here each of the, see, for example, here I have 2 decimal places. Here I have 1 decimal place. I have many more decimal places in other places, in other quantities. So you should be consistent based on your data. So for example, this is consistent. It keeps a 1 decimal place for everything. That is not just a matter of style. It's a matter of what is possible in the experiment that you're running. So that is how this is done. And we present the data accordingly. But most importantly, a table is useful when you want to give a specific value. Okay. On the other hand, the weakness of a table is that it is not so good at conveying a trend. So supposing you want to show that something is increasing initially, it was increasing initially, and then it started decreasing. Okay. So I mean, today now everybody goes and looks at COVID cases data. COVID cases in the day, how many were there? They go and look up. Many places in the internet have the data. So every day there is a number. If I simply put a table which just shows you number across the last 100 days, you 100 entries of numbers. If I have, just looking at it, just looking at the numbers, you will not get a sense of what is happening. On the other hand, the same numbers, if it's drawn as a graph, you will be able to see, oh, there was one peak at a certain, between a certain date and a certain date. Then the cases dropped and it remained low for several days. And after that, again, there was another climb. Then it again it reached a peak. It crossed the peak again. It has dropped down. So this trend in the data is much better seen if you use a graph. So any graph here, this is a graph which shows trend, but there's still some errors here. I'm coming to that. But a graph is very good at showing a trend. And so that is what this that is useful in a graph, which the table cannot do. The table cannot show you a trend easily. A graph can show you a trend easily. Table can give you the accurate value that you are trying to convey. A graph will not give the accurate value that you're trying to convey. Graph is better at conveying the trend, not good at giving the correct exact value. Now, the same data that you see here, if I put it as a series of numbers of xy, 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 you will never know that it gives this shape. But if I plot it, you will know that it gives this shape, right? So that is why a graph is very useful. What is wrong with this graph? Well, it did not have any axis, no labels in the axis. So now I have put labels, and I have also put what quantity is there, what is the units for it. Now this graph is correct. And I also put a caption below it. So now we know what is this graph about. The third option you have is a photograph. A photograph is very good because it gives you the real image. So this is the cycle which is running using a fuel cell. So I got even a close-up of the fuel cell. So you can see the fuel cell, you can see how it is mounted, you can see what is the relative size of the fuel cell. I have shown the hydrogen storage unit here. What is the size of the hydrogen storage unit? Everything you can see. So you get a very real feel for what is the actual product or event or activity that that is being spoken about. So a photograph is very good in that sense, that it gives you a real, true realism is conveyed by a photograph. So why shouldn't we use a photograph every time? We can always use photographs. Photographs is, especially today with your mobile phone and the kind of the quality of cameras we have on our mobile phone. Everybody has cameras. You can take all sorts of photos. Why don't we just fill the place with photos in a technical report? The reason is photographs often show more detail than is necessary. Sometimes you want to emphasize only a particular piece of information. The photograph shows so much that it is difficult to, the rest of it utters the image. So for example, let us say in a car engine, there is a particular valve that you want to, or valve, or let's say a filter that you're putting in a car engine. You want to show that this car engine is using this filter. Now, if you simply open the, the front bonnet of a car or hood of a car and take a photograph and put it, it will be a mess of wires. It will be a mess of, tubing going in different directions. A lot of various other things that you will see. You will see a battery. You will see so many other things. So many small containers containing various fluids and so on. It is very difficult to figure out where the filter is. So it is very confusing. I mean, it is confusing in the sense it is just too much detail, which is not conveying the important detail of where that filter is. So while photographs are important, sometimes I'll show you this. Sometimes the schematic is better. A schematic, so you can see on your left a photograph, on the right a drawing or a schematic. This is better because it is, you can see on your left, this is actually the Hubble Space Telescope. You can see the robotic arm of the space shuttle holding the telescope because they were doing some repair. You can see part of the space telescope, the space shuttle down here. You can see the solar panel, lot of vents and other things that are there on the ports that are there on the telescope. A lot of other cabling or whatever it is that is going around the telescope. You can see a little bit of the Earth out here. So there's just a lot of detail here, which is all not necessary if the whole purpose of this is simply to say that solar panels are attached to the space telescope. So you simply say this is a telescope, there are solar panels and things are attached to it. So in a drawing or a schematic, you can control the level of detail, which you cannot control in a photograph. In a photograph, you just have too much detail, and people will be, what should I say, confused as to what it is that you're trying to emphasize. So that is the point. So you can draw schematics like this, which go, again, if I had actually put a photograph of this, you would have found it very difficult to understand that the fuel cell system actually has these parts. You will find, one mess of things, wires and tubes and pipes and hoses in different colors, sizes, styles, all of them there, and you would never be able to figure out that the system actually was laid out like this. And this is a more technical drawing where you can go down to an atomic level and still show you some detail. This is a layout of carbon atoms on a sheet of graphene, and what you can do based on some calculations you can do based on it. So importance of scale. Whenever you do all this, it is very important to convey scale. So just to give you an idea, so this is a monument that many of us would have visited. And in case some of you have not visited, this photograph will not convey to you the scale of this monument. In fact, I got to see it only when I was maybe 12 or 14 years old. That was the first time I had seen it. But before that, I had only seen images of this, photographs of this monument, the Taj Mahal. And at that time, I mean, as a kid, I always simply thought that these were all windows and this was a door. This is the kind of imagination I had, that this is a door, these are all windows. So you can think of this, a little bigger than a house kind of structure is the way I imagined it to be. So when I first saw it, more than, I mean, at least at that age, more than any of the details that other people maybe they would have appreciated more. To me, what impressed me a lot was the size of that monument. So you can see here my imagination of this whole thing being a door, and then when you see this image, what you see here, these dots that you see here are people. So now that you have people on this image, you have a sense of scale. So this is nowhere close to a door. This tiny opening in the center is the door. And this is a huge, massive structure. This is like almost a 10-story building or something of that nature. It's a pretty largish structure relative to what you may think of if you have never been there and you're just seeing an image without any sense of scale. So in technical presentations particularly, you must include something that very clearly indicates the sense of scale. So for example, at in some electron micrograph or photograph, then we do, you will have what is called a marker bar. So you will put a line like this and say that this distance is 20 nanometers, 20 into 10 power minus 9 meters. And then on that basis, you can figure out what's the size of various things that are present in this image. So this is the correct way of showing something. Okay, so we are almost done here. I'm going to come to the summary. So you can see here we have come through all of these things. Only other thing that I would add is one of the main things that we want to do in as I come to the summary that I talk about. One of the main things that we want to do in a technical presentation as well as in a technically written document is to there are two purposes to it. One is to convey the information, whatever is the information that you're trying to convey. And the other thing is to convey it efficiently. That is the most important thing. Okay, so that is why we don't want to write some, unnecessarily long papers are not welcome. You should write things in a very concise way, and you should be ready to give the details away early enough. So especially in the abstract of a paper, you will actually give away all the main results of the paper. And you may think that, if I do that, nobody will read my paper, but that's the idea. The idea is that only people who really want to read your paper will read your paper. So this is not, a technical paper is not like a storybook. We don't want to hide the details and, throw it in as a suspense at some point, which is what many of us who are first time writers may think. No, technical paper is the opposite. You just give the details away right at the beginning. Right at the beginning, you tell that, so and so was the thief. I mean, you'll never see a movie that starts like that. They are not straight away going to tell you, no, the bad person is this, that's all, over. Now, rest of the movie, you figure out how we found out, but this is the person. So we never say that, but in a technical presentation, you do that. So what is the summary? We do start with, we provide an outline. We appreciate that a technical presentation is an event, unlike a journal paper, which is, is just a one-time event. Audience and duration are important constraints. You have control on them in a presentation. You have no control in a journal paper. You should know how to connect with an audience, and that is based on three major things. One is how busy your slides are, just a judicious use of special effects, and you should avoid simply reading from the slide. So these are things that you should avoid doing. And also when you come to, as part of this, when you come to illustration, you have different types of illustration that are available. So you can select them based on what it is that you're trying to convey and which form of illustration is best suited to convey that. Like I said, if it's a trend, a graph is better. If it's a particular value, the table is better. If you want to show realism, take a photograph. If you want to control the level of detail, show a schematic. So this is the way you do it. So you pay attention to detail, how much detail you want to show, how much detail you don't want to show, what is the level of complexity you want to show or hide. And the scale is a very important thing because it conveys to the audience how large something is, how small something is, and so on. And finally, you should make a summary so that when you're all done, people can quickly grasp the overview of what it is that you were trying to convey. Okay, so I think that's all I had to share. I will halt now, and if you have any questions, I can take that.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Let me just ask to the audience. Participants, if you have any questions and queries, you please write it in the chat box or in the question answer session so that we can put in front of our.
Yeah, I have noted down two questions.
Yes, sir, please.
I think first one is like, who has asked it? If somebody wants to raise a hand, we can unmute them also if they want to ask themselves. Miss Kavita, do you want to ask yourself? We can unmute you. Raise your hand if you want to. Dr. Ravi, can we make her?
So what's the name, sir?
Kavita, Kavita. Repeat the question she's asking. In case she is willing to extend her question, then it's okay. Sir, The question to you, sir, is some journal publisher asks for references of reviewers while submitting the paper. How can we how can you find the list of reviewers for a specific journals? I don't know.
No,
From
I
previous
didn't
session.
follow. They sometimes ask for suggested reviewers. Is that what you're asking? Sometimes yeah, that if you know anybody, so one way is if you know somebody who's working in the area, you can mention that person's name. Or alternately, if you are giving some 5-6 references in your paper, or maybe usually some 10-15 references we may give. If there are 10-15 references, then some of the people who are in those references are likely to be appropriate reviewers. So you can list them as the reviewers, potential reviewers.
Thank you. Second question is from Chandra BP. He is asking, if we do not scale or not sure about the scale, what is the best way to present?
Well, we kind of went over that, and so broadly those are the things what we just saw here are the main things that we are looking for, having some control on time, some control on the flow of the talk, and most importantly making sure your audience stays with you. I think that's maybe the most important thing. You should always in a real session, I mean in an in-person session, it is very important to I mean, first you should have gauged your audience well, because it is difficult to completely redo your talk, especially a new speaker will find it difficult to completely redo their talk on the go. A more experienced person will be able to do it, but you should really make eye contact with your audience to gauge whether they're understanding or not. That is very important, I think, because you are spending some time there, they are spending some time there. It shouldn't be that at the end of it was a waste of time for everybody. So you should keep watching their eyes as you look around. You will know they're nodding, or they are their expression shows that they are following what you're saying, and you should be alert to that. So if you think you have said something that maybe they didn't understand, you should slow down and maybe explain that point a little bit more. And you can do it naturally. You don't have to say, I think you all didn't understand and all that. You don't have to do it. Just add the extra detail and keep moving. I think that's all you really need to do. The rest of it, if you follow, it'll fall in place.
Yeah, thank you. The next question is from Priyanka Bajaj. Sir, what should be minimum font size to be used in a presentation?
Font size. Well, I don't have a specific value. I usually pick some 20 font, 20 size or something like that is what I pick, and then I put. Yeah, so that's all I have. I don't have a particular fixed value. I'm also just looking at some questions here.
Yeah, please.
Okay, some games for learning effective speaking skills. Suggest some techniques to develop interest in practice learning process. So there are actually very nice groups about public speaking. They have, so you should get a bunch of friends together, and you should give, I think, a good game to do. I find, in fact, I learned this now actually watching my son do it in his school. So there is a bunch of people who come together in a Google Meet, and you assign, let's say 10 of you have come, and you will assign for that week. For that week, you assign 3 people as the speaker or 4 people as the speaker. The other 6 people have a job to do. So one of them will keep track of how many times you pause, how many times you lose track of what you're saying, how many times you do this kind of, what I have also done right just now, that they call the person an counter. So they count the number of R's. So these other 6 people, they will keep track of all that. And the 4 of you will present one after the other on a topic that you know from before. You can give a topic in advance 1 week to prepare whatever, and then you do this. So then you get an idea, how each of you presented on the topic, who got more points, whatever it is, and then you rotate amongst yourself. You can also give impromptu topics. You can say, today, I mean, after this first round of 4 people presenting with 1 week's preparation, you can have a topic for the day which is released right there, and then everybody gets 2 minutes to talk, and then again you have some few people sit and amongst yourself keep track of specific things that that should be done, should not be done, and count that and tell them. So these are nice ways of organizing amongst your friends some activity which will help you steadily keep improving. So I think that was from Rachna Bairagi. So think that's, yeah, that was the question. Yeah.
Dr. Abhi Sharma is asking how to decide the appropriate length of presentation.
So that is usually based on whoever has invited you to present. So they, I think the best is to ask them, because they will tell you we want a 1 hour presentation, 15-minute presentation, something like that. Usually, I mean, in most things, even in from school or college thing, usually not more than 50 minutes. 50 minutes to 1 hour is really all typically people will be able to handle. In fact, increasingly people say make shorter presentations, 20-minute presentation, 15-minute presentation, and so on. Then if you have a long presentation, try to put in activities in the middle of the presentation. In classes that is easy, you can actually, these days there are many apps and websites where you can run a poll in the middle of the class. So in the middle of the class, you can put a question on the board and you can give them a link. They can go to the link and select their answer. As they select the answer, that in your screen, it will draw a bar graph of how many people are indicating what. So therefore, you can do it that way.
Shruti Mishra is asking, sir, can multiple graphs 2 to 4 can be added in a single slide? I think this is
definitely. Just as long as the numbers are readable, any axis values are readable, you can do that. And of course, in the graph itself, you can overlay some graphs and all. Yes, you can show 2 to 4 graphs, no problem. Just make sure that it is everything is readable, and also give people time when you put that graph, when you put that slide up, then don't rush through the slide. Give people time to understand what those 4 graphs are. Maybe your focus is only on one graph, and you're simply indicating the other 3 graphs to show 3 different conditions where there is one particular change that you want to highlight. So you spend more time on the graph 1 and simply say at so this graph is at 50 degrees centigrade, that is at 60, 70, and 80, the other 3 graphs. And primarily what you're seeing is that one particular peak is becoming stronger and stronger, something like that. So if you want to do it that way, then it's fine. So think what you are trying to do with that thing, and then you can do it.
Maybe looking at another question only. This is the last question from my screen. Maybe Ravi and Bharat might have got more questions. Kavita again asking, some journals paper says the article should have minimum 20 pages. Minimum 20 pages. That was. But if my article has less number of pages, then what should I do?
That is difficult to answer. I have usually seen only upper limit. I have not seen lower limit. Actually, I'm a bit surprised that they have said like that.
Yeah.
Usually they ask only upper limit. They set an upper limit because they will have some constraints on how many pages they can print per article. So I'm not really sure what they mean by. If they ask more, then you have to simply write a more elaborate description of your experimental work, experimental setup. So you can give much more technical details that way. So it is possible to fill the space, but I'm surprised that they would ask like that, because usually that means you're adding detail which you didn't think was really necessary.
Ravi, are you seeing any more questions?
Sir, there is a one question
Bharat?
from.
Bharat, please.
There is a one question from Rehearsing. What is the best option, black and white or colored photographs in technical paper?
Both are fine. I mean, I have no problem. If you have a color photograph, you can show it. There is no problem at all. So usually experimental setup and all, when we show a photograph, it is in color only. We don't make any specific effort to make it black and white. What I get off the microscope, for example, is often already in black and white. So then I leave it in black and white. I don't artificially color it. But sometimes artificial color is useful. It is useful. So sometimes you'll, for example, let's say people are showing rain pattern. They will show the world map or map of a region, and then how the rain has been shifting. So the colored areas will be where the rain is, and they will keep showing you day by day how it has shifted. Or the weather pattern is changing, and the weather pattern, wind speeds. So you will have a black and white image of the cloud and the ground. But if you want to put wind speeds on the cloud, you can have from white to deep red as increasing wind speeds. And so you can see in the same cloud pattern where the wind speeds are higher, where the wind speeds are lower. So you can use the color very effectively. You just have to decide how to use it. You should mention why, if you have really used color in a very thoughtful way, you try to mention it to them. See, by using this color, you can follow this wind speed, and then they will understand it. Then it's very nice way to do it. Try to avoid deliberately just like that adding color, but what comes naturally you don't have to hide. It's okay.
There is another no.
In chat
Yes,
box,
yes. There is a letters are asking for 4 pages only. Then what should be the content, and can you elaborate, sir?
Yeah, so some of the journals which call themselves letters give very short, limit. You have to stick within the limit. It is a bit of a challenge, but best way to do it is to read few of their papers that were already published there. Then you will know what kind of detail they show and what kind of detail they don't show. So maybe they don't show anything about the sample preparation. Then you also don't show anything about sample preparation. You simply say we used samples of the following compositions or something like that. You don't go into the detail of how that composition was arrived at. And then maybe they just mention the technique and don't describe the technique. So you also do the same thing. You just mention saying I did X-ray diffraction, but you don't go into a lot of detail of how you set up the X-ray diffraction process and all that. So reading a few papers from the journal will help you before you publish in that, before you try to before you make a submission to the journal saying that this is what I'm trying to say.
Sir, I cannot see much questions. Ravi sir, are you able to see some more?
There's one question about how to read technical papers or article.
How to read it? Well, okay. See, I will tell you what I do, which is which gives me a quick idea of what I wanted. So I actually simply read the abstract first, and I read the conclusions next. So these are two things I read. I don't get into the middle of the paper yet. First, I read the abstract. I read the conclusion. This between these two, it tells me whether or not this paper is of interest to me, because I may want to do something. I may want to tell my student to make a particular experiment, and if these two are not conveying to me that they have actually done the same experiment or actually got some useful data out of the experiment or such thing, then I will not bother reading the rest of the paper. So I read the abstract, I read the conclusion. If after doing this, I find that interesting, then I usually quickly skim through their experimental details, and then results and discussion, because experimental details I skim through a little bit faster, because many times those are experiments we are commonly using. So we know those techniques mostly, unless they are saying that we did something different in our experiment. So then we read that a little bit more. After that, the results and discussion you have to read a little bit carefully, because they will be talking of a very particular aspect of a particular result. So that only if you read carefully, you will get the point that they're making. It's easy to not get the point. It's easy to just read it and not understand what it is that they were trying to emphasize. So results and discussion, you end up having to read a little bit slowly. Only then you will truly benefit from reading that paper. But other things you can read, skim through and do. And it's only a matter of time. See, this is maybe initial papers you do a little bit more carefully. Then if you're in the research area and you keep on reading many papers, then you yourselves will know what it is that you're looking for. Then any paper you pick, you quickly skim through the things that you are already familiar with and get to that point that you are really interested in. And that is the point that you will pick up. And if you're writing notes, then that's the only one point that you'll write as your notes from that paper.
So there's another question. What is blended manuscript?
I'm sorry?
Blended manuscript.
Blended manuscript. I don't know what that means. I don't know. I have not heard that. I'm not very sure.
Okay, sir. There's another one, sir. How to manage an engaged and knowledgeable audience when many of them bombard a barrage of questions during the presentation?
So that is difficult in some ways, especially if you are a new speaker and they are, just trying to gauge how confident you are. They will keep on asking you a lot of questions. So you should, first of all, try to stick to your presentation. You should say that the scope of my talk is this, my scope of the investigation we have done is this. So if it is outside the scope, you can say, yes, I actually don't know. It is outside the scope of what I am presenting. Our focus was this. So you can always bring them back to what you are trying to say. It helps to be a generally well-read and confident person. So you can answer a few questions outside that area also. It should not be that this is the only thing you know and nothing else you know. That does not convey a very good impression in interviews and so on. But you can say that, I know some general aspects of other things, but really my focus has been this. So I have only focused on this. I have not really looked at other things in too much detail. So I'm more comfortable answering these questions related to this particular activity that I have done. So you can bring them back a little back to track. So you have to keep that in mind. They may take you in tangents. So you should every time you give the answer, towards the end you should slowly try to bring in, as part of your answer, you should try to bring them back to your topic, so that they come back and start asking you about your topic. Otherwise, they'll just go on that tangent. Some tangent, next, it will keep going. So you have to handle it that way.
So what is a graphical abstract? Some journals ask while submitting.
Yeah. So a graphical abstract is simply they want, let's say, the most important graph or the most important photograph of your work. That is with some caption. So that photograph or the graph most significantly captures the main point you are trying to convey. If it was a totally new experimental setup, then it should be the photograph of that experimental setup. Or you saw one, say whatever it is, let's say magnetic field from a particularly a material which is not normally supposed to be magnetic. Under a particular circumstance, it is showing you the magnetic field. So your test showing the magnetic field under those circumstances, that graph will be your graphical abstract, and below that you will say magnetic field demonstrated by such and such material under this condition. That will be just a 3-line caption below it, and this graph. So you should pick that key graph which conveys the main point of your work. That's it.
Sir, actually, Mr. Saurabh has rewrite the question, and it's not the blinded manuscript. It is, I think, it is a blind manuscript.
Double blind.
Writing.
Blind review.
Double blind reviewing process.
Yeah. Correct. So blind review simply means when you submit a paper and to a journal, and the journal sends it to somebody to review. So whom are they sending it to? You don't know. So they will not tell you. So you cannot say. I mean, they will not tell you that I have sent it to your friend in this college. So that you can contact your friend and say my paper has come to you, take care of it, kind of thing. They don't want you to do that. So they will send it to somebody, and they will not tell you whom they have sent it to. So this means you are blind to whom they have sent it to. You don't know whom they have sent it to. But that person to whom it has gone, he will see your name. He will see you are from, whatever, you are from NIT Warangal, you are in chemistry department, whatever it is, your name, your organization, your department, all the detail, that person who is reviewing your paper sees. So this is called single blind process, where you don't know to whom it has gone, but that person knows whose paper he or she is reviewing. Okay. The double blind process is one where you don't know, of course, to whom it has been sent, but the person to whom they are sending, they will remove your name. The journal will remove your name and organization. They will remove your name. They will remove your from NIT Warangal or whatever. So all the details they will remove. They will only send the paper to that other person who is reviewing. So that person doesn't know whether it came from NIT Warangal, it came from IIT Madras, it came from IIT Delhi, it came from whatever NIT Nagpur, it came from Stanford University. Nothing they will know. They will have no idea. They will have to look at the paper purely on the merit of that paper. And many people feel that the double blind process is better than the single blind process, because what happens, and I also think this is true, what normally happens is that the same paper or something that looks almost identical, if it is coming from some university in the US, it appears that they get an easier review process. If it is coming from a university in India or Korea or China or Taiwan or any such place, the process seems to be more harsh. It is more likely that the reviewer will say no, or simply find some fault with it, kind of thing. Same paper is coming from some university in the US or UK or France, because they have been at it for a long time, and it appears that they are ahead of everybody in science. These kinds of impressions are there. So people generally review that more leniently. They'll more readily agree to whatever is being written in that paper and say, yeah, it looks very good, we approve. Now in the double blind process, this bias is removed. This bias is gone. And see, the bias is definitely there, in my opinion, in many places, because at least it appears so, because you will find that certain journals will keep on publishing papers from certain people. So that is how it is. This is not to say that they are not doing good work. They are doing good work, no doubt about it. What I'm saying is there are a lot of other people also who may be doing good work, but who will have difficulty getting into those journals simply because their name is not known, and it simply adds to the difficulty of This name not being known is something that is removed when it's double blind. When it's double blind, everybody's name is not known. Every paper is coming from an unknown author. Then when I review it, I have to only review based on, if I am the reviewer, I have to only review based on the content of the paper, not on the based on the name. I will not first read the name and say, I don't know who this person is. Maybe he has not done a good job. Maybe he has not done it thoroughly. Let me ask more questions. That is not how I will read it. I will read it and see whether it is good or not. If it is good, I'll say yes. Not good, I'll say no. That's so that is why double blind is, I think, a much better way of doing things. But many people are yet to do it. Very few journals do it double blind. Most of them do single blind.
So there is another question, if you permit.
Sure,
From
please.
Yeah, from Amit Kumar Sharma. How to choose an appropriate PPT template?
Okay, that there's no fixed answer. Like I said, we are doing technical presentation, so template is actually not very critical. I usually, in fact, start with a blank slide. I don't even pull a template. I don't put any colors. I start with a blank. I open blank and then start putting my images in it. So I am not very big on template, to be honest. I just start with blank sheets and do it because I find generally the template means there will be some lines with some colors and there may be a band or something, and that seems to block some of the slide space. So I'm losing a little space. It feels like that to me, or I'm forced to write only in a certain way, and I'm not comfortable with that. I like that space available to me so that I can use it the way I want. So I am not very, I don't use templates too much, so I'm unable to recommend a particular template to you. But there may be good templates, and you may find something that is that works well for the way in which you generally present something. So this does not mean templates is bad. So you please see, and if you like something, you use it.
So there is another question from Shruti Mishra. What
Yeah.
is monograph and how it is different from research and review paper?
Good question. I don't have a very good clear answer for that. Maybe another time I'll have to get back to you on it. Yeah, I don't have a good clear answer on that. No.
Thank you, sir. Says the questions are still coming. So with your
Okay.
permission.
Yeah, it depends on your time. I mean, if we are out of time, then it's fine. Then I'll just thank everybody and close. If you have
No, we have two decoupled sessions. We
okay.
have 11 to 1 and 5 to 7. So
Oh,
it's
you
up
have
to
a
you.
lot.
and understand that.
Okay, we'll take a few more. We'll take a few more and then we'll
Sure.
close. Yeah, please
Sure.
go ahead.
Yes. This is what's sir. Does the inclusion of any person from a reputed institution in the paper increase the chance of acceptance in any journal? Even the name is just included. No.
Yeah. I know what you mean. This is not recommended. People say it's very unethical to include the name of a person. First of all, you should get their permission to include their name. And if they are good about it, they will say no. They will not allow you to just like that add their name unless they have participated in the work. So don't do it. But in general, I mean, somebody who is reputed in the area does add more credibility to your work. So that is there, but don't add it just like that. They may also not like it. Definitely don't do it without their permission, and they may also not like it because they want the really authentic people will want to know the work. They will want to have participated in the work. Only then you can include their name in some format. It is not just like that. You cannot include the name. It's not considered correct.
So please highlight a few major differences a technical paper should have compared to a non-technical one.
So non-technical paper, you are really free to write. See, like I'll tell you, see, there's a big difference between science fiction and a science paper. In science fiction, you are reading a story. They are also using some new concepts. They are also talking of they're imagining something, some new concept they're thinking of, and they're writing some story based on it and so on. In science fiction, many times there is always an element of surprise. There is an element of, conversation and things like that. Similarly, in a general article, you write an article for a school magazine, or you write an article for a local newspaper about science in an area. We are talking about different discoveries in different places. You will pull it all together. You will write it in simple language. You will draw examples from day-to-day life. You will compare it with say some experience they may have when they are shopping. They may some experience they may have when they go to a cricket stadium, some experience they may have in their kitchen. So you will draw examples from these kinds of day-to-day experiences while you are trying to explain something that is a very technical piece of information. So the technical information is very high level, but you are using day-to-day examples to explain it. In a journal paper, we don't do this. In a journal paper, I'm not going to take examples from the kitchen or from the from the shop and use it in a technical paper unless it is something related to sales in a shop or some such thing. So in that sense, we tend to use more formal examples in the journal paper, and we don't draw what shall I say, similarities just like that. We are much more careful about similarities. We will not just randomly compare things in a journal paper. They have to be very technically sound to be compared that way. So these are some key things that are different. The fact that it is a formal structure and you don't hide anything, you're trying to efficiently give the information and all that. In a general public article, there's not much structure. It is quite informal. Your purpose there is to make sure that the audience understands every line and that they are enjoying the reading. So this is the way you do it.
Any other questions, sir? Ravi sir, can you see some more questions over here?
No, sir.
Sir, this is a one question from Shyam Sundar Meena. What is the difference between SCI and SCIE?
Oh, again, I don't know. I don't know the difference between those two. I have not really kept track of that. No. I also saw that. Yeah.
Yeah,
some indexing, right? Some science index, something.
Yeah, index.
Yeah.
Ravi, you want to answer that?
Yeah,
this is a science citation index and expanded. So list is shorter or longer. That's
okay. Yeah.
I think I see one more question which we have skipped. Maybe very trivial one. How to summarize a paper so that we can use it in our own writing coherently.
Use it in our own writing?
Coherently. How to summarize a paper so that we can use it in our.
So I would say, yeah, you look at their abstract and you look at their summary. That's a good place for you to understand what is it that that paper has really tried to convey. And also look at the title. The title of the paper itself is supposed to have conveyed that in a very short and crisp manner. So you have to look at those two. Those three: the title, the abstract, and the summary of that paper. And between the three of them, you will be able to write 2 sentences, which in your view conveys the main point of that paper. If you do that, then that is what you can use for your writing from there.
There's one question, sir. In single blind review, do the reviewers check author profile in Google Scholar or ResearchGate?
They might. We don't know what they do. See, once it goes to them, we have no idea. It's a human being at that side. It totally depends on their curiosity, what it is that they are interested in, how much time they want to spend on it, what is their intention even. Sometimes they are really authentic, sometimes they're not so authentic. So it's full of variables. So actually, I think many times first time scientists, first time authors and all find this very difficult because throughout our school and college, we don't have such an arbitrary process. You know which teacher gave the question paper, you can go and ask him why I didn't get 3 marks, why you gave that person 2 marks, all this stuff you can go and ask. You go publish a paper, you can't ask anything. You send it, you have no idea, you will receive one thing saying no, rejected. Not, I don't like what you wrote. It is not up to the mark. You will think you have done a great job. You cannot go and say, but you published so and so's paper. Why are you not publishing my paper? Nothing you can ask. So you have to just get used to it. So this is the issue. So what they do, we have no idea. It's a very arbitrary process. So sometimes we should, as part of our education process, we should have at least one course where students are exposed to peer review, even within their own class. So you should send the answer paper of the student. So let's say 50 students. Each student's paper you take, you remove the name, and you send it to three of the students in the class. Randomly you send, and their mark is the average of whatever mark those 3 students give for their paper. So and you can have some rules so that somebody doesn't arbitrarily keep giving 0, 0 or something. You can say your mark will be affected by how you grade other people. Whatever, you can figure out some process. But people should get used to the fact that you don't have control over everything. That is something that they have to get used to. And I think peer review is one great example of it. You have no idea what is going to happen. Same journal may publish a much lower quality article, may reject yours. Some higher end journal may accept your paper. We have no idea. It's every time it's like a little bit of a lottery when you send it out there. You have no idea really what is going to happen.
Right. Any more
I think
questions?
there is no question. Yeah.
Okay, then.
Excellent session with you, sir, and a lot of thanks to you for devoting such time and efforts.
My
And,
pleasure. My pleasure.
And kindly accepting our invitation for this. I
Thank you.
think
Thank
our
you.
participants are definitely benefited. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ji. Namaste. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. And we will always expect your future collaboration with us
Sure. Certainly.
on such type of events.
Yeah, sure.
And we are really thankful to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Yeah.
sir.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Sir, I think there is no announcement, so we can just.
There is no announcement.
there
Only thing is like we request all the participants to avoid overstepping of the time with other speakers. Please join in time. So, for example, in the evening section, you should all join by 4:45, so that we can start right in time and does not overstep the second speaker time then.
Correct. So I think the message is clear to all the participants, and we really request you to, so that, because like this feedback you people have gave in the last FDPs which we have conducted. In that we have given the freedom to ask so many questions and allow any time. So you people have give a feedback that we always extend our time. So we want to make it everything within the time framework. So please cooperate with us and join before 10 minutes starting the session. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all participants. Thank you, Bharat, for being here.
Thank you, sir. See you.
Ravi, thanks. Meet you in the evening. If you have
Thank you, Ravi sir.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.